Welcome back, everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today we have so much to catch up on, you guys. I've missed you all. Definitely did not intend to take a little break, but one week led to the next, and here we are. But now I'm ready to get back into the swing of things. I'm feeling energized, feeling good for the spring, and we just have a lot of good stuff to catch up on. I've still been reading, so yeah, a lot of stuff to recap there. So I think this video, we're just gonna do a little bit of Q1. I probably won't cover every single thing, but I'm gonna try. So yeah, cover things that I read in Q1, talk about some current reads, and then we're gonna get into some hopefuls that I wanna get into when we get into May. I hope you guys have been doing well. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get back into it. First, as I mentioned, we're going to get into quarter one and just kind of wrap up some of the hits and misses really quickly from January through like end of March, kind of beginning of April too a little bit. Unfortunately, we have to kick things off on a not so great note. We need to talk about Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This was actually one of the first books that I read in 2025. I read this like very early in January and I did not enjoy this book at all. I think it will actually be one of my worst books of 2025 when all is said and done. Not a great way to kick off the year. It started off strong, and then by the middle of the book, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be for me. And by the end of it, I was 100% correct. Not for me, did not enjoy this. But this is a 2025 new release, came out at the beginning of this year, and it's said to be great for fans of Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff and The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. Two books that I happen to really love. So, you know, with that in mind, I did go into this book with really high expectations. No, if you are a fan of those two books or even just one of them, I would not go into this book because of that. I just go into it if the synopsis itself sounds interesting, but do not have those two books in your mind if you go pick this up. This was just so all over the place. We have different creatures in the world. One of the big groups, we have vampires, and vampires, they're divided into different social classes. And one of our main characters, I think her name is Sam. Again, I read this a while ago, and she is in one of the lower or lowest class of vampires. And the book has a mystery component to it because the son of one of the like ruler vampires was killed at the beginning of the book. And so Sam, she stumbles upon something that she feels like she could use to further her station in society. And it just kind of goes from there and starts spiraling out of control with her getting involved in a rebel group, and we get POV from different characters, and you know, the mystery just starts to unfold from there. I had so many issues with this book. Some are larger and some unfortunately are just really nitpicky because I was already pretty annoyed while reading this. But one is that I think this book is so all over the place. I don't think there was a need for this to be in first person. We have different characters that we follow, and the whole book is in first person from their perspectives, and they all sound the same. There's no distinction between these characters. I wasn't a fan of a lot of the dialogue that we were getting. Sam has a best friend in this book. Every time they speak to each other, they always refer to each other by name, like at the end of every single sentence. It was actually getting frustrating after a while. Another big thing that I found really distracting in this book, and I've never said this about any other fantasy book that I've read before, I do not like the naming conventions in this book. I found them to be just really corny, if I'm being honest. I think the names for like the different classes of vampires were a little cheesy. And then also just some of the town names were starting to sound the same and just blend together. I don't know. It just all felt very corny, very unoriginal in a way that I just found to be frustrating after a certain point in the story. And just on top of that, the momentum in the story just completely falls off the rails around the midway point, and I just found myself not caring about anything that was happening. So yeah, I didn't enjoy this at all. I really think it was just weak from a lot of different angles, and the more it went on, the more I was like, I should really just be DNFing this, but I saw it through. I regret it. I will not continue this series, and this is now one of my worst books so far of 2025. Next, let's get into a sequel, and that is The Cage of Dark Hours by Marina Lostetter. This is the sequel to The Helm of Midnight, and this is another one where unfortunately I don't love it. I thought it was good. It was not the sequel that I was expecting. It definitely was not stronger than The Helm of Midnight, which is a book that I love so much and I've been raving about a lot. Honestly, at this point, I feel like The Helm of Midnight should have been a standalone novel. I'm on book 3, The Teeth of Dawn, and I've been reading that book for months, but my interest in it is just thinning so quickly. And I think the series, you know, overall has just grown beyond what I was thinking. And The Cage of Dark Hours was good overall because we did get this massive explosion of the world and the history, and you know, you learn so much about how different characters are connected from the first one. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I think just on a storytelling level, this is starting to get really convoluted. It reminds me a little bit of how the Foundry side, or the Founders trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett, just kind of got out of control for me. I feel like we're here with The Cage of Dark Hours. It's like you get this really nice, contained, really interesting dark story in The Helm of Midnight, but now in book 2, the lid is just blown wide open in a way that is just, the story is blending so many different things. And I'm like, how did we get here? Like, genuinely, slow down. But again, I did enjoy it. Nowhere near as good as The Helm of Midnight, which I still highly recommend because that is just such a phenomenal story. But I think I just need this series to sit with me a little bit. Eventually, I am going to finish The Teeth of Dawn, book 3, but right now I don't really have the strongest motivation to do that, just from where we've been headed. But again, check out book 1. It is definitely worth the read. And I'll still continue to recommend book 1, but maybe as a standalone. And then next, let's get into some sci-fi novellas. First up, I read Rose House by Arkady Martine. This is the author of the Taxicalon duology, So Memory Called Empire, Desolation Called Peace. And this recently came out, but it was like re-released because this novella itself is, I think, like a couple of years old at this point. I enjoyed this. This was solid. This is something that I will recommend. I didn't love it, but again, this was a good read. So at the heart of the story, we have this architect who is extremely famous for his creations, his designs, and one of his biggest and most known designs is Rose House. And the concept of AI comes into it because the house itself is AI instead of like AI just being embedded in the house. So it's really creepy too when you think about it. There are some really good elements also of sci-fi horror that we get in this. Sometimes the house is communicating with one of our characters who's a detective, and their conversations get really creepy at points. And the story starts when the architect has already died, and his protege, who wants nothing to do with this house, wants nothing to do with his legacy, she is being brought back into the fold because someone has been found dead inside Rose House. And the whole mystery of the novella becomes, you know, well, who is this person? Because no one but the protege is supposed to be able to get inside. So who is this person? How did they get in there? What's going on? So the protege is brought back into the fold. We get a detective and her partner in the mix as well. And it becomes this really interesting narrative about, you know, IPs, creative properties, who has the right to what, and protecting your creative interests. And of course, you know, AI is at the heart of all of that as well. So yeah, really fascinating and also really creepy at times. So I do recommend this. If it sounds interesting to you, definitely go check this out. And then next up, I read Lost Ark Dreaming by Suyu Davies Okumbawa. This was fantastic. I loved everything about this, and it actually got me so excited to finally dive into Okumbawa's fantasy series that starts with Son of the Storm. So I loved it. I highly, highly, highly recommend this. The marketing for this says that it blends the movie Snowpiercer with River Solomon's novella The Deep, and that is the most accurate marketing for a book that I have seen in a very long time. That's exactly what you get in this. You get kind of that tiered socioeconomic living that you do in Snowpiercer, mixed with those heavier themes that River Solomon explored. I thought this was incredible. So we have two timelines going on in this. One is our present day story. It's a bit futuristic from us. And you have these characters who live in this tower called the Pinnacle. And the Pinnacle, so bringing in Snowpiercer here, the Pinnacle is divided by socioeconomic classes. So you get the wealthy people at the very top of the Pinnacle. You get your people who are more middle class, who live on those middle floors. And then you get the lowest class who live at the bottom. And some of the bottom levels actually go into the water. And so we have three main characters that we're following in this, and each one comes from one of the different tiers in this tower. And they're trying to come together to figure out what is going on with the structural integrity of the Pinnacle before something disastrous happens. But in the process of this, they are starting to, you know, uncover mysteries about their ancestors, about some of the earlier people who lived in these towers. And so you're getting that story, but at the same time, the narrative is flashing back to are somewhat present day, still a little bit in the future from us, where we're getting these politics off the coast of West Africa, you know, that deal with rising water levels and people being displaced because of these levels, people being forcefully removed from their homes in favor of these 5 towers being built for the wealthy so they can escape the climate disaster that's happening. I just loved it. I love the way that it was told. I think we get those flashbacks at just the right moments. And there were just some passages in this that really hit me a little harder than I was expecting. I loved it. This was incredible. This is one that I'll definitely have on my recommended rotation going forward. Please go pick this up. Do yourself a favor. This was amazing. And next, you guys, I picked up Grave Empire by Richard Swan. This was one of my most anticipated releases of 2025. This was great. However, I think I have a slightly unpopular opinion about this. Even though I was highly anticipating this and I did really enjoy it, I still don't think this was as good as The Justice of Kings. I can't wait to see where this sequel series goes though. So this takes place about 200 years after the events of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. We're following new characters. There's a completely new problem. But one thing that I've been seeing, you know, this question pop up of, do I have to read Empire of the Wolf trilogy before getting into this series? And technically you don't need to read the original trilogy first. If you just go into Grave Empire knowing nothing about those first 3 books, you will understand what's happening in this perfectly fine. Like, again, new characters, new issues, we're following a brand new journey, and it's 200 years later. So there's kind of like nothing in that regard that would really trip you up. But one thing that I did really love about this, and why I'm excited to read the rest of the series as it releases, is if you have read the original trilogy, you already understand the way some things are in this new world. Like, they have some laws against magic, religion, things like that, that will only make sense if you've read the original trilogy. You know, about why they think the things that they do toward magic, why they behave a certain way, why there are certain laws in place. That's all consequence, basically, of the things that went down at the end of Trials of Empire. So you get kind of that ripple effect that bleeds over into Grave Empire. So, you know, if that is something that you think you want to know more about and get into, then I do highly recommend you read the first 3 books. But just off the bat, you don't need to read one to understand this because they are so far apart. We have a couple of main characters in this, Renata and Peter, and I really enjoyed them both. We do get a third perspective woven throughout it as well that I won't get into. My big issue with this is I think this book takes a while to get where it's going. I think there's a lot of time taken to set up this world, post Trials of Empire, set up the new problem, really try to establish these new characters, just so you know, have a bigger attachment to them now that we don't have Helena and Von Vault anymore. So you can definitely feel that heavy lifting happening up front. But again, I think it's just a little bit too much. As you get more into books 2 and 3 in that original series, especially in the 3rd book, the series really begins to lean into fantasy horror. And by the time you get to Grave Empire, we're there. Like, the gloves are off. This is a fantasy horror novel. And I think there was a lot of time taken in this book to just kind of keep hammering home like how creepy things are and the voices that everybody keeps hearing. There's just a lot of time taken to establish that creepy atmospheric factor throughout this book. So when you start kind of wading through all of that, you're like, oh, this story is actually really great. So I mean, again, this was great. This was such a strong start to this series, and I am excited to read more. But you're probably not going to have this same issue that I had while picking up this book, just with the pacing and everything. I love Richard Swan's work at this point. He is definitely one of my new favorite fantasy authors. So yeah, I'm going to keep reading the series. This was great. Next, let's get into another 2025 release, and that is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, another one of my highly anticipated reads for 2025. Nnedi Okorafor, for me, just doesn't miss. I love her work. I love her work. She's an auto-buy author for me. I will read whatever she puts out. And so yeah, this was top priority, top of the TBR when it released earlier this year. And this was great. I would say this is probably the book I've read from her that feels the most like it could fit in a literary fiction category. It's definitely a sci-fi novel. I'll get into that in a little bit. But again, I think this is one where you'll see it in like the literary fiction, general fiction kind of shelving as the year goes on. I can definitely see that. So in this, we're following our main character Zelu. She's a writer, but her career hasn't done a whole lot to this point. She's also teaching creative writing and just overall feels kind of, stuck in life and in a rut. And she also has her overbearing family that she is dealing with as well. And so at the beginning of the novel, at her sister's wedding, she is laid off from her teaching job. So in the aftermath of that, and just with all of the frustrations about her life building up and the things that she's thinking about, she sits down to write something that is just for her. And that book becomes Rusted Robots. And that is the other story that we're getting over the course of Death of the Author. And I'm not gonna get into what that story is about at all. I think it's so fun if you go in and explore it for yourself, and it's really good. And so from there, the narrative is going back and forth between Zelu and her Rusted Robots novel. And from there, her life just completely changes. She is catapulted to literary stardom almost overnight. Everybody in the world quite literally knows what Rusted Robots is. They're raving about it. And in the midst of that, as the story keeps getting bigger and bigger, we start getting into themes of people misinterpreting your work and what you're trying to say, and people thinking they know you when they really don't. You can definitely feel that Nnedi Okorafor put so much of herself into this novel. It feels very cathartic in a way that I haven't read from her before, but also at the same time, there's a lot of funny moments in here too. It's such a good novel. It's such a well-structured book. And I think the end of it just brings things together in a really fun way. I loved it. And then finally, you guys, we're making some progress in my series TBR. I have finally started the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington. I read book 1, The Shadow of What Was Lost, and I love this. Am I a little biased because I love The Will of the Many so much and I just wanted to read more James Islington? Probably. There might be a little bit of that wrapped up into this, but this was just really good. I had so much fun with this. I love the fact that this feels like just a very traditional kind of epic fantasy story. It definitely pulls on so many tropes that we have seen time and time again. But the things that I loved about The Will of the Many are showing up in The Shadow of What Was Lost. I'm really just impressed with the way that Islington can take these classic stories and, that even feel kind of tropey in some ways and just do something that will flip the structure completely on its head. I had a good time with this book. It is so good. So there is so much going on in this, and I knew it would be. By the time I hit like chapter 3, I was like, this is gonna be a long week and a half. So if you're curious about this series, trying to get into book 1, but you're like, I have no idea what to expect going into this, I'm gonna try to set the foundation for you a little bit, completely spoiler free. So 20 years before the start of this book, there was a war against these really powerful beings known as augurs. And, they had a vast range of abilities. They could do a lot of different stuff. And so the augurs have essentially been wiped out by the time The Shadow of What Was Lost begins. One of our main characters, Davian, he is actually exhibiting abilities that the augurs had back in the day. So we have that going on with Davian, and someone shows up at the school that he's at and is like, you know what? You need to get out of here. Leave. Go that way, go north and figure this out. And he does. Davian sets off from his school that he's currently at, and the story starts rolling from there. We also get perspective from his best friends, Wur and Asha. In Asha's perspective, we're getting like more of the political side of things. Wur has his own interesting backstory going on as well. But we also have another character that we're following, who I am not going to get into at all, but the entire book, you're like, who is this character? And you definitely have your suspicions. I had so many theories. I landed on one and I actually ended up being correct, but I don't think what was revealed at the end is like true. So, I mean, it's a whole thing going on, but it's so good. I also love the way that the story is structured. There are a lot of things that are happening and you don't really know when they're happening, things that characters are saying that, haven't really come into play yet. Oh, it's so good. I probably am not making any sense about this, but it is so good. I really love this. It definitely starts off and feels like it could be like a little cheesy, classic, epic fantasy story, just not really doing much to reinvent the wheel. But I love the way Islington can take those tropes and just be like, nope, here's a really cool story for you. So I had such a great time with this. I love the mysteries that started coming out in book one, and I am definitely going to get into the second one, An Echo of Things to Come, as quickly as possible, because this is getting a little complicated. There's a couple of different magic systems happening. The structure of it just feels like, you know, it's just all over the place at the moment. So I don't want to let too much time pass between reading this and the second one, so I can just keep it all fresh in my mind. But I love this. We came out the gate swinging. I think this is going to be a great series. I cannot wait to read book two. And then finally, you guys, very quickly, let's just go through some of my current reads and then also what's on the horizon. So right now I'm reading 2 books, like actively reading 2. It could be considered 3, but I'm reading The Republic of Thieves right now by Scott Lynch. I'm buddy reading this with Ty from Ty's Book Corner. Ty and I have been buddy reading this series together for the last like couple of years now. So she is the only person I would have done this with. I'm really happy that we're both back on the Gentleman Bastards train together. And I will say, both of us actually, Ty will tell you her own thoughts, but we are both so far enjoying this third book more than the second one. So that was such a pleasant surprise, because I had so many issues with the second book, Red Seas Under Red Skies. I just felt like the momentum that we got from, you know, coming off book one was just completely lost. I thought the second book was so meandering, very poorly paced, and I just didn't have a good time. We weren't in Camorra anymore. I feel like Camorra is just such a strong setting, and it felt like a character in and of itself. And taking that away just feels like some of the magic of book two was lost a little bit for me. But this book, Republic of Thieves, it's a lot of fun. It's not quite as good as The Lies of Locke Lamora, but it's had some really good moments so far. So I just want to keep seeing how things are playing out. There is a character who Locke and John have been talking about for the past 2 books. Like this, she has been mentioned so many times, and we finally meet her in book 3, and it's good. It's really good. She was worth the wait, and Locke has certainly met his match. Yeah, it's fun. I'm really enjoying it. I just want to see how they can outmaneuver each other, how they're going to keep clashing. She's definitely the spark this series has been needing. So I'm enjoying it. We'll continue reading this. I'm like smack dab in the middle of this book. And then I'm also currently reading The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This is actually a newer epic fantasy release that just came out at the beginning or like mid-April. This has been great. I've been having a lot of fun with this story. I love the way that it's told. It's also incredibly heavy on the political intrigue, which I have been enjoying. But in this, we have an empire where the emperor has to step down like every 24 years, and they choose their next emperor by hosting this competition between the different monasteries. It's like 7 of them. And so one person from each monastery is put forth to compete. The book really kicks off when one of the contenders is murdered. And from there, our main character, Nima Craw, is put to the task of figuring out who killed this character, why, and it just spirals from there. The case has taken so many interesting twists and turns already, and a lot of it is already connecting back to a big event that happened in the first like couple of chapters at the beginning of the story. So I want to keep seeing how this is going to play out. I really love the voice. I love the way that it's told. In addition to Nima's perspective, we have another POV as well that I've really been enjoying. I'm not going to get into it because I do feel like it's kind of a spoiler, but I do love how the voice switches every now and then. I'm not someone who loves competitions, trials, games. I think I get really tired with that trope pretty quickly. It's not that I won't read it, but I feel like it's been so overdone now that when I do see it, I'm just kind of like, oh, here we go again. But I think Antonia Hodgson is finding different ways to keep it feeling fun and fresh and just really engaging. And so I do want to continue reading this and hopefully wrap this up the next few days or so, because this is really great so far. And then finally, you guys, on the horizon, we are getting back into the Sun Eater series. I'm so excited for this. I'm going to be officially picking up Kingdoms of Death right after I finish Republic of Thieves and The Raven Scholar. I've already started it. I'm only a few chapters into it, but not like actively reading it because I am prioritizing those other 2 books. But once those are finished, we're back into Sun Eater. I can't wait. I've been waiting for this moment for a while. I knew I was gonna, get back into Sun Eater pretty early into 2025. And I just want to catch up to the series and get prepared for Shadows Upon Time later this year. So I love Sun Eater. I have talked about it so much. Book 3, Demon in White, made my best books of 2024 list. So I just think it's going to keep getting better and better. I've heard Kingdoms of Death is completely devastating, so I'm going to have to prepare myself for that, but I'm ready and can't wait to just dive in. I miss Hadrian, so we got to get back at it. And then after Kingdoms of Death, I do plan to get back into Lycanius and pick up an Echo of Things to Come. So yeah, that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys have been reading in the last couple of months, what's really stood out to you, what you haven't really been enjoying. I want to hear about all of it because like I said, I have really missed you guys. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. I promise it will not take like 2-3 months for it. We're back at it and it's going to be a really good year. So looking forward to getting into some spring and summer reads with you guys. It's going to be a good time. But until then, take care.